suicide terrorist explosion in central Damascus claims the lives of 50 citizens and wounds 53. Two cars full of weapons and ammunition are seized in Yabus border crossing point, and armed forces enlarge their operations against terrorists. And Russian President Vladimir Putin calls for an end of violence and an end for sending weapons to Syria. Good afternoon, this is News in English. A suicide attack using a car bomb took place between the square of Sabah Bahrad and the Shahbandar area in Damascus. The death toll reached 15 martyrs and 53 wounded, in addition to huge material damage. Damaged buildings were also seen on the place, included a school and a hospital. The explosion took place in a crowded area. News reporter asserted that reports by some TV station about clashes in Damascus were groundless. The bullets were fired to open the way for ambulance cars racing to save the wounded victims. Prime Minister Dr. Wael Halaqi inspected the scene of the terrorist explosion and the casualties, as he stressed that Syria is going on in its war against terrorism till the end. The Prime Minister said that the aim of those terrorists is to hit the infrastructure of the country and sabotage the private properties. Syrian border guards foiled an attempt by terrorists to infiltrate into Syrian territories from Lebanese territories in the area of Tel Kalakh in Homs countryside. The attempt was accompanied with gunfire by the terrorists from the Lebanese side against border points. Several terrorists were hit, while the rest of them fled away into Lebanon. In Idlib countryside, a Syrian Arab Army unit killed and wounded several terrorists in a number of countryside villages and towns. Also in Al-Hasaki countryside, as a Syrian Arab Army unit destroyed a convoy of vehicles carrying machine guns and killed and wounded the terrorists in them in the town of Hamis in the countryside of Al-Qamishli. In the countryside of Latakia, a Syrian Arab Army unit targeted a gathering of terrorists of the so-called Jabhat al-Nusra, killing and wounding a large number of them, including Abu Ubaida al-Tatwani, of Moroccan nationality, and Ahmad Omar, leader of the so-called the Brigades of the Kurdish Mountains. A Syrian Arab Army unit also destroyed 3 vehicles full of weapons and destroyed 2 pickup vehicles carrying machine guns in the village of Jub al-Ahmar, in addition to a lorry full of ammunition. Syrian border guards and security forces at the crossing point of Jdedet Yabus in Damascus countryside captured 2 vehicles full of weapons and ammunition being prepared to be smuggled into Syria. Those in the 2 vehicles were arrested, and the weapons and ammunition were confiscated. As our armed forces achieved significant successes in various areas, the General Command of the Syrian Army asserted that our heroes continued their noble mission of chasing the terrorists of the so-called Victory Front, Al-Nusra Front, and the NATO mercenaries. The statement added that in the framework of the plan of the General Command to control Damascus countryside, and after the successes achieved by the Syrian Arab Army in Daraya city, units of our forces carried out an operation in eastern Ghouta which led to surrounding the whole area, and work is underway to expel the remaining terrorists out out of the Ghouta and Damascus countryside, aiming to restore security all over the homeland. The statement said that the General Command will continue announcing the achievements of the Syrian Arab Army in combating terrorists on the ground, thanking honest citizens for their cooperation with the armed forces. The General Command also reiterated its calls for those who were misled into bearing arms to abandon their weapons so that their status can be resolved, similar to those who returned to the right path before, which helps stop bloodshed and restore security and stability to the country. The news camera presented part of the operations of the Syrian Armed Forces in the eastern Ghouta in Damascus countryside.
Eh?
German sources exposed the arrival of mercenary terrorists from various nationalities into Syria in order to carry out a Zionist Western aggression to impose the new imperialist agenda on the region.
German officials said that increasing numbers of Germans were going to Syria to join the armed terrorists there. Mr. Hans-Georg Maassen, chairman of the Federal Office to Protect the Constitution, told the German newspaper that Syria had become the new destination of German jihadists. Security officials estimated that nearly 40 Germans had actually entered Syria, and more were expected to follow. Some of them traveled to Syria from Egypt, while others went directly from Germany. The paper quoted security sources as saying that there were nearly 700 European Islamic jihadists already in Syria. They entered from neighboring countries like Turkey. Moreover, the German paper Der Spiegel said there was a crippled German terrorist on a wheelchair fighting with Al-Qaeda terrorists. The International Center for the Study of Extremism in London has recently asserted that hundreds of extremists from 14 European countries went to Syria to fight with the terrorists of Al-Qaeda. They carry the nationalities of Germany, Britain, France, Holland, and the countries of Northern Europe. The French paper said that foreign extremists in Syria were more than those foreigners who fought against the Soviet forces in Afghanistan. This caused France to reconsider the question of arming those terrorists. Several major European papers like The Guardian, The Daily Telegraph, The Times, The Washington Post and Le Figaro said those terrorists were fighting with Al-Qaeda branch known as Jabhat al-Nusra. Yet the West countries claimed that they supported democracy and fought terrorism, while terrorism is surely a Western product.
Russian President Vladimir Putin and German Chancellor Angela Merkel called for a political solution to the crisis in Syria. The crisis in Syria and the relations between Russia and Germany topped the talks between Putin and Merkel in Berlin today. The Russian President renewed his country's stance, which calls to stop providing the terrorists in Syria with weapons after Germany. Putin will travel to Netherlands to discuss bilateral relations and urgent international issues. That was our news for today. More details on our website www.syriaonline.sy. After the break, our economic news.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. The workers in the field of exchanging and money transfer considered the procedures taken by the Central Bank of Syria in imposing positive intervention on the foreign exchange market as great procedures. that meet the banking sector's needs. The Exchanging Committee pointed out that the continuing positive interference policy in the foreign exchange market by the central bank is useful and necessary to overcome the negative effects of the foreign currency's high prices against the Syrian pound, emphasizing the importance of taking necessary measures to control the black market effectively in order to protect the Syrian pound. The Minister of Industry said that the industrial public sector proved its worth and importance, specifically during such difficult circumstances. The stressing that the current phase needs multiple efforts from the workers in the ministry to overcome the crisis effects on the sector. The minister also pointed out that the scale of the crisis was unexpected, so there was a slackening in taking the appropriate preventive measures for these circumstances. That is why the ministry adopted a systematic vision according to two tracks. The first one depends on what could be implemented during the crisis, as the second determining the industry's futures in the post-crisis phase, noting that implementing rate in the food companies is about 51%, while the expenditure according to the investment plan approaches 310 million Syrian pounds. Using oil derivatives fell sharply due to the current crisis as a result of the traffic crashes, as well as stopping the workshops and laboratories in most areas, which caused a decline in using fuel because of the lack in diesel and gas. The manager of the fuel company said that the decline reflects the country's difficult circumstances, while several sectors were impacted due to the lack of some oil derivatives, especially in agricultural, industrial and service sectors. As for the gasoline, there is a natural decline, not because of the lack in the material, rather due to the transportation difficulties, stressing that the problems of the diesel and gas are about to be solved, whereas the problem of gas in the southern area is linked to the security condition. The American spot oil rebounded after the biggest weekly drop in 6 months, snapping 3 days of declines. The Brent's premium to New York crude was near the lowest level since June. Futures gained as much as 0.7% after falling 4.7% in the week since September. The U.S. stocks fell, capping the biggest weekly decline of the year for the Standard & Poor's 500 index after data showed that the nation added less than half the number of jobs economists forecasted in March. The European stocks were up for the first time in 4 days, rebounding from the biggest weekly drop since November. The Japanese shares, on the other hand, rose, with the Nikkei 225 stock average recording its highest close in 2 years. Gold dropped as holdings in exchange-traded products declined and the dollar climbed, cutting the demand for the metal as an alternative asset. Gold for immediate delivery fell 0.2% in London after sliding as much as 0.3%. The yen fell as low as 99 against the dollar for the first time since May 2009 on speculation that the Bank of Japan measures will fight deflation announced last week. The yen dropped against all its 16 major counterparts for a third day after Bank of Japan officers said last week they will boost monthly bond purchases to $7.5 million. Ladies and gentlemen, this was our economic news for today. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.